Hey there, friends. Like we said, we're here back at 5:30. It's Thursday. Hope you guys are all doing good. Welcome to our live webinar. I'm Shay. We have our VP of Sales here blessing us with his presence. We have Mark. How are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm really excited to get to this Q&A and really deep dive and let everybody know what's going on with podcasting and monetization.
Absolutely.
So today we're obviously going to walk you through advertising, how can I promote my podcast? And also, how can I monetize and make money while podcasting? I think the number one thing people always look for when podcasting is not only, people hearing your opinion, but where is the money? And so we are going to tell you today, folks, please hold your questions for a little later. We're going to go through a couple of things, just letting you know the gist of it, and then we'll open it up to questions. But for right now, I think it's really important to ask yourself, I think Mark can attest to this, but how seriously are you taking, your podcast? Is this the beginning? Because if it's the beginning stages, I don't know if you should be so hot and heavy with making money right away. You need to establish and be consistent and have something, worth someone obviously putting money onto. And so, you need to gain that traction to be consistent, gain that traction to see that monetary value in the back end. And so if you're a full-time podcaster or a very consistent podcaster, I would say that, this is the right place to be so you can learn just how to advertise correctly and monetize and make sure that your podcast is making that money. So
I was just going to add in.
No, please.
You absolutely. You're in a great place to have an audience and an established show, and I don't want that to discourage you from looking at monetization options throughout your journey, because honestly, there is options for monetization at every stage of the podcast journey. It's just at the early stages, you're probably going to have to keep your day job, is all that we're saying. Right? So there are ways to continue to make money, to build upon a strategy, and we'll go through those today as a large focus of what we're looking at for monetization kind of through the podcast life cycle.
Absolutely. And Mark has spent a lot of hours, a lot of hard work putting together this little presentation for us, as well as, just unloading the bits of information that we need to get monetizing and, get those ads rolling right away. So could you tell us a little bit about that? I know you have a presentation to go over.
Yeah, so I think we can just jump right in here. We as I mentioned, there is a strategy for every part of your podcast journey. So just starting out, you're going to make money that's going to look different than if you've got a show that's getting 50,000 downloads a month. But the great thing about podcast monetization is there are a lot of different ways you can generate revenue streams, and it's all yes and. You don't have to choose between one or the other. And so what we're going to see here is that we're going to be able to go through strategies that early in your podcasting journey still make sense later, and you're just building upon those as you go. So we'll get first. We just kind of want to dispel some myths about podcasting. I see a lot of people come into podcasting and you can sell advertising and you can do the math, figure out where your audience needs to be. And it's like, I've got a great show. I'm going to make tons and tons of money, and this is going to be my new living. And there are people who absolutely do that. But starting out, there is no get rich quick with podcasting. It is work, the same as any other way to make money is work. And if you do just kind of traditional audio advertising, you're working on what's called a CPM model, and it's basically what you're being paid for 1,000 ad impressions. And so for podcasting, that range is usually $5 to $25 per 1,000 ad impressions. So you've got to build up quite an audience for that to work out. But that doesn't leave you all high and dry. It's just have a reasonable expectation about what that style of advertising will bring for you.
Amazing. I love that myth. I can get rich quick.
That's it. We see it. But on the flip side of that, you can start to do that math. You're like, well, I'm not going to make any money at all. Why do I even want to even do this? And the truth is, there are strategies that aren't CPM based advertising that make a lot of sense at the early stages of your podcast journey. And utilizing those, you can supplement with the advertising income. You can build those advertiser relationships, and you'll find further down the line you have a more robust CPM based advertising strategy as you go. And then the third myth is I can just focus on creating great content and the money will come. You can have an amazing show. Fact is, there are 4.4 million podcasts out in the market presently. And breaking through the noise isn't just about to your audience, it's about to potential sponsors, and it's about to advertisers. So you have to find a way to get into hunter mode, get out there, find the people who are going to be interested in talking to your audience through you. And you have to treat it like a business in a certain way. You can't just focus on the fun parts and expect the revenue to come. You can't just focus on the fun parts and make a great show, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want the revenue side of it, there is a whole marketing yourself and building a business that goes along with it, that makes these monetization strategies work. So it really starts with how you view your audience. You've got valued listeners. How do you value them? Right. And the fact of the matter is that everybody has different roles they play throughout life. So I'm a husband and a father, and I like to play golf, and I have all kinds of things that are true about me. Those give me different identities to potential advertisers and sponsors. Some of those are more valuable than others, and we'll get more into that. But as we all play different roles in our lives, we play different identities to advertisers, and you can use that to make sure that you're getting the best return for your time and your effort by going to the right people about the right value.
100%.
So as an exercise, we're going to talk about Frank. Frank here is first and foremost a living human being, and that's good for Frank. He's a husband. He's a father. He likes to play golf. He's a pharmacist. He loves the news. He's a resident of a small mid-market town in Washington, part of the Tri-Cities there. It's actually kind of a fun place to be. And he's an avid runner, right? These are all things that are true about Frank and parts of his identity, and that's important to advertisers in different ways at different times. So as we kind of break it down, and I think the text on this one's a little bit small, I apologize, but as a living human being, Frank is one, he's attractive to any advertiser that wants to sell to anybody, right? So the kind of commoditized, generally low value, but anybody could be interested in this kind of ad can go to Frank, and it can be very, very relevant. But Frank, as a pharmacist or as a news junkie or as somebody who might be able to get to a restaurant in Kennewick, Washington, Frank has more value because he's harder to reach specifically, right? So getting to those specific ears is how you raise that value up. But for each of these identities, there's potential advertisers, right? So pretty much anybody will advertise to a living human being. As a husband, you might find counseling apps, vacation packages. As a father, you have education and toy companies. And the more specific you get, the more specific the advertisers you can find. And those advertisers will generally, as that audience becomes more specific, begin to value that audience more or at a greater value. So just kind of a breakdown using Frank here. If Frank is a general listener to your 4 episode a week show, and so he's listening all the way through. He's getting a pre-roll and a mid-roll ad. Then Frank is worth about 12 cents on a CPM-based programmatic model, right? As a general human being, Frank will get the McDonald's ads, absolutely, and he'll bring your podcast about 12 cents a month. As a subscriber, though, Frank is worth $1 a month. It's pretty much the standard subscription rate that we see out on like Apple podcast subscriptions right now, right? So the comparison of what Frank as a listener versus Frank as a subscriber is pretty stark. It's an order of magnitude. But even beyond that, Frank as an opinion leader, somebody who brands and companies want specifically to take their message out to the market, who they believe influences a large number of people. Frank's worth probably in the range of $5 a month. And we can talk about how we do that math when we talk about sponsorships a little bit. But and then the other option is Frank is just a huge fan of your podcast, and he would pay you for merch and events and extra episodes, whatever that might be. Frank is worth about $50 a year in that case, right? And so Frank can be 12 cents to $50 a year, and it all just matters how you view him and sell him to your sponsors. All right, so talking about the right strategy for where you are. Sorry, clicked the wrong thing.
Frank loves golf. He's my kind of listener.
Yes. All right. Yeah, no, Frank was a quick brainstorm. I'm not a pharmacist, but the rest of that is fairly close. All right. So as you're in the beginning of your podcast, and I think we generally see with podcasting, there's a long tail of people who are in the beginning or the early growth stages. That's part of being in a growth industry, and that's great. I suspect a lot of you we're talking to right now are kind of in this or the next stage. So you've got a small but loyal following. You've got a general format locked down, but you might still be kind of playing with different ideas about what your show is about, how it's working. You've gained some general new listeners, but you're still more acquiring an audience than retaining one at this point. And that's pretty normal for this part of the journey. And that puts you in kind of the 1,000 and less for monthly downloads and 500 and less for monthly reach. Difference between downloads and reach, by the way, just to make sure we have the parlance down. Downloads is anytime anybody listens to a podcast. Reach is the person that's listening to the podcast. So if Frank listened to 50 podcast episodes, you would have 50 downloads and 1 for reach, if that makes sense. So when you're at this stage, we really want to value those, or we want to leverage those high value per listener strategies, right? So that's going to be 1, subscription and paid content. There's no better value than somebody paying you directly for your content. And yes, it will be a smaller fraction of your audience, but you can see with the math versus what they're worth as an advertising target, especially when you're starting out, using a subscription model can really bring you a lot better return a lot faster. So 1,000 downloads may be worth $10, $15 CPM. 50 paid listeners are going to be worth $50, right? We have at Podbean, we have a direct integration with Apple Podcast subscriptions, and this makes it really simple to put out content. It can be early release, ad-free, additional content. They've got several levers you can pull, but a lot of this walled content falls into those categories, and we find it's very effective for the people who are putting it out there consistently and make it kind of a core part of their early strategy. And it's as seamless as it can be to implement from Podbean. If you go into your monetization, we can't share a live screen for this piece. I apologize for that, but if you're a Podbean user, you can go into the monetization tab on your left screen. You can see Apple Podcast subscription, and there's a step-by-step guide to set this up. And you just pick your strategy and you follow the steps, and you're off to the races. And now you're just promoting it out and getting your subscribers, and you start seeing that revenue coming in. A lot of our users also use Patreon. We had a patron program that worked very similar. We've actually just sunsetted that. So at this point, most of our users have moved to Patreon. This is another kind of direct sponsorship, and you can put walled content behind it, but you have a little more flexibility of what you can do. So I'd highly encourage people early in the podcasting journey to look at direct individual sponsorship or micro sponsorships like you can get through Patreon. That might not be it's not the same as a subscription, as in you're getting the same amount of money every month for the same thing. You can have one-time or one-off kind of giveaways. You can get more creative in that field. As your podcast starts to grow, and I think this is where the second half of our audience is most likely today. You're going to see that rapid growth. Your growth rate's going to start to slow down. You'll have acquired your audience. It's going to be maturing a little bit. And those early stages of rapid growth, you're going to notice start to plateau. But during that process, your show is going to have developed a firm sense of identity. It's going to be very clear what my podcast is about, what people can expect when they tune in to hear it. And then I've got a solid base of dedicated listeners. This is really important for this because at this point, your podcasting strategy is every bit as much about retention as it is about acquisition. You want to make sure you're getting people coming back. When you see that happening, you know you're kind of in this mid-maturity stage, and that's going to put you generally in the 1 to 50,000 downloads a month. I know that's a broad range, but there's a broad range of podcasts out there, and then 1,000 monthly reach. So as you hit into this mid stage of your journey, what we see works amazingly well is flat rate sponsorship. This is something that I think gets overlooked in advertising a lot because it's a lot of upfront work, but it's a significant amount of return for the effort that you put in. So we have a customer right now. She's amazing. Her name's Kira Deneen. She runs a podcast called DNA Today. And she has built a business around this podcast that's not just, hey, come pay me $25 per impression to hear my advertisers or to speak to my audience as an advertiser, but hey, pay me this lump sum per month for a set period of time, and you can come have ads on my podcast, but you can also come and talk on my podcast. We're going to put you on our social media, and we're going to put you in the newsletter, right? And there's a whole packaged value that Kira is taking to the advertisers, and because she's a genetic physicist or a genetics counselor, I believe, and so she has a very specific audience that she's speaking to, and that's a valuable audience to certain advertisers. And so by packaging that audience together and charging a flat rate to say, hey, across all my channels, across all these different methodologies, we've got a package that's going to make you look like a thought leader, and it's going to make you look like somebody that they want to talk about to their colleagues in this space. That's a high value package that we're no longer talking on impression, right? You kind of change the conversation, and that allows you to charge a much higher rate, get a much higher amount of monthly revenue. You might be charging $5,000 per month, whereas it would be worth maybe $100 in impressions, right? And so that's the idea that you really want to get to in this mid stage. At Podbean, we have a tool. It's called Pod Ads. It's a great way to utilize dynamic advertising in this space. And we highly recommend doing that because it gives you the ability to control what's being put out there, to prioritize it. And you can also then get the feedback on what's working. You can even go so far as to place pixels into these campaigns so you can know if they're going to the company websites or wherever it is you might be sending them. So you have some of the tools of digital advertising, but you can incorporate them into this broader package through our Pod Ads program that way. If you go on the left-hand side under monetization, you just hit the ads options as the last one there. It's a pretty easy walkthrough, but I think the emails that you got to come to this came from me. So if you ever have questions, just shoot them my way. So yeah, sorry. The other item that you might consider at this stage of your podcast journey is getting into that marketplace. So you need 1,000 downloads a month consistently to really make any kind of splash. And I think even to qualify for most marketplace advertising. Podbean has a marketplace where that's true. So you can just opt in, hey, I want to be listed. I'm where advertisers are going to go look, and they're going to have the option to set up campaigns directly on my account. And that marketplace-based advertising generally pulls in a higher cost per impression, but it is impression-based advertising. So you're going to see less of your overall revenue mix coming from marketplace, but it's a great way to start establishing and finding those other people. They might start out as a marketplace advertiser, and you might sell them next on a package for a sponsorship, right? Like it can be a lead generation engine for you as well. So what you want to do to stand out in the marketplace, you want to make sure that your title and your show description clearly indicate your audience. If you go to any ads marketplace in podcasting, you're basically going to get a brief description and the show art and some basic stats about the show. So if you want to show that you're speaking to a very unique and valuable audience, you need to show that in all three of those pieces of your media. If it's not clear what you do, you'll get skipped right over because it's just kind of part of the background at that point, right? And so the more specific you can be about your audience, the more specific you can be about your value, the better likelihood is that you will get deals through marketplace advertising. And like I said, you can then leverage those if they're quality deals to find other revenue streams from them as well. One other quick note on this is the point where you're at this stage where you're using pod ads and marketplace advertising. You're going to start making decisions about where you're going to put ad markers in your shows. That's because you're going to be using tools for dynamic insertion. Both of these technologies use dynamic ad insertion in the podcast, and you want to find that balance of, I want to make sure I've got plenty of inventory to sell, so I'm not selling short, but I also want to make sure that I'm optimizing to minimize my listener drop. So if I put 5 ads 20 seconds apart in my mid-roll, probably not going to keep the audience that I'm looking to have valuable. But if I put 1 post-roll ad in my episodes, I'm also minimizing the value that I could have out of my advertisers. We typically recommend 1 pre-roll for sure, and then depending on the length of the episode, 1, 2, possibly 3 mid-rolls. But a lot's going to depend on your content, your audience, and your advertisers. So now you've gone through that, and you're making money hand over fist, and you're making audience anyway, hand over fist. So how do you make money from it? At this stage, you've got a reliable, consistent numbers. We find the podcasts in this range have generally cemented their strategies in the tier, or in the monetization. The monetization strategies from the lower tiers we talked about already, and so they've got a good sense of how they're generating their cash and getting going. They also have a good sense of what their audience is because they've been in that retention mode for a while. They continue to grow, but a lot of their growth now is word of mouth, and it's kind of this organic growth from that mid tier to the large tier that we see. At this stage, I think there's also a sense of fandom identity. So in the mid tiers, people might say they like your podcast. At this stage, people are a fan. So my wife has bumper stickers of podcasts that she's a fan of.
I love it.
Yeah, that's. I'm sorry.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's we cross over into this fandom, right? And so the strategies that make sense here can tap into the value there. You're also a high visibility podcast, and generally you're going to be in 50,000 plus download range. So at this stage, programmatic advertising is where revenue is going to start, or it's going to start bringing in more significant revenue. And that's not to say that you don't want to use it in the lower tiers. As soon as you sign up on Podbean, when you sign up for the marketplace advertising, you actually are enrolled for programmatic advertising. You can opt into it or out of it, but you will find that the revenue that comes in from it is less significant than the other strategies for sure. So here's where it starts to switch over to be a significant revenue stream, and that's because you've got an audience that's big enough to make significant revenue off of $5 to $10 per 1,000 impressions. Some things about programmatic advertising that will make you successful, though. Keep it clean. Podcasting is a free speech space, and we respect that and we love it, but brands are very weary of the space. And there's a lot to do with brand safety right now out in podcasting. And so one of the things that Podbean does for our advertisers is we perform safety checks, brand safety checks on all of the podcasts that have opted into programmatic advertising. And they're basically told this podcast is clean, or it's risque. It's got some explicit content. And overwhelmingly, the advertisers, because they're serving this in real time, they don't typically get the chance to review the podcast like they would in a more direct deal. So they're going to err more conservatively, make sure that they are on the cleanest content possible. It's not to say you can't get any programmatic advertising if you swear every once in a while, but because it's rather Boolean in its expression as clean or not clean, staying on the clean side of that line is definitely the way to get more ad pickup in your show. The other thing is you want to make sure that you choose your advertising wisely. Like, just because, kind of the same way that brand safety is important to your advertisers, your show's reputation is important to you. So you don't necessarily want a bunch of car ads coming into the middle of your meditation podcast, or alcohol ads coming into your Mormon weekly sermons. It's you want to make sure that you're opting out of advertising, because same as your advertisers can't review your show before the ads are served, you don't have the option in programmatic to review the ads before they are served. So proper selection is very important to retain your audience, to make sure you're keeping the reputation of your show up as well. And the last thing on programmatic is that you just have to be a little patient with it. Even at this stage where you're 50,000 plus downloads, it takes a while to build discoverability. All of the feed side of that, everything that's getting pushed into our programmatic offering here is done from large ad agencies who have some control over where that advertising goes. And so as your show picks up more ads and shows more return for those ads, it will begin to snowball and you'll pick that up. It usually takes a few months to really start to see some traction there. And for the two other kind of unique things that you can do once you're in this stage of your podcast, and it's not to say that you can't do these earlier, but they become uniquely valuable, I think, at this stage, is live events. You can start to sell tickets to shows, right? You have live tapings of your podcasts, and you can make pretty good revenue that way. If you're more local, you can do this on a smaller scale, kind of in that tier before. If you speak about something where you're going to have a lot of local audience that all around, Kennewick, Washington, want to talk about bars, you can go set up an event there at the bar and have people come to the live taping there. Those options make more sense if your content speaks to a more localized audience. But as you get to this large stage, you'll find that you'll find pockets of large audience in various places and get that done usually. And then merch, you can at any stage in your podcast start selling merch. Like I mentioned, my wife has bumper stickers on her car, right? But people, especially when they're in that identity fandom stage where they're like, I am a fan of this show, will want to express that and signal that to others who would be fans of that show. And so you have some opportunity to bring that into a much higher value tier for what you're doing. For merch, if you're going to start early, there's a lot of print on demand shops that you can just link to from your show descriptions. It's really easy to set up. It's easy to start. The less bespoke it is, the more expensive it's going to be. So just understand that you may not make as much money from it at first, but once you get enough volume coming through, that is a viable revenue strategy that can make sense for you. So here I talked a lot about programmatic advertising, and I consistently, every time I talk about programmatic advertising, I get a lot of questions about how does programmatic advertise? What is it even? I don't what is this programmatic advertiser talking about? And so this is actually from a presentation I did a few podcast movements ago now, but I did it to help kind of explain in a very simplistic way how this all works and why it's different from other marketplace advertising. And so there's kind of three players, four if you count the listener, in this value chain. So you've got the listener who is downloading information from the host. The host is where the podcast content's coming through. The host then supplies that information to a supply side provider, which is a SSP, and then a DSP is a demand side provider. And so the way to think about it is advertisers will go to a DSP, they'll go to a demand side provider, and they will say, hey, I want to talk to lemons, right? I've got cool lemon stuff. I want lemons to buy. And so as Mr. Lemon here is listening to the podcast, that hosting service can go to the SSP and say, sometimes the hosting service is its own supply side provider, but basically it's just a message. Hey, I've got somebody listening that I believe is a lemon. And so that SSP is going to go to the demand side and they're going to say, hey, I've got a lemon listening. You got anybody who wants to talk to lemons? And then they're going to say, yeah, sure. I want to talk to lemons. So that SSP is going to take it back to the host. Host is going to say, "You bet," and then they're going to insert it into the podcast at the ad marker, so that the lemon is like, "Oh yeah, I'd like to have some groovy lemon stuff." Um, that whole chain, that whole value chain, takes place in a fraction of a second. So you hit the ad marker, and that all fires off. And that's the reason why programmatic setup is so important to have right up front with your brand safety, with your tagging, all that, is because there is no decision space at this point. All decisions made before, and they're made after. You can make adjustments after when you get something you don't want on your podcast. Like, oh yeah, I don't want that. But there is it all happens in real time, often on a bid structure, and so that's hopefully demystifies it a little bit. Basically, an advertiser is going to come in, they're going to get a signal that someone they want is talking, they're going to go, all right, send it to them. It is by its nature less tied to your show, by content or by quality. It's more by audience. It's a little bit nuanced there, but the way to think about programmatic advertising is the more specific and the larger your audience is, the easier it is to get that real-time advertising come around. And then one last piece for a bonus round. If you get really good at any of this, I'm constantly talking to people who want somebody who knows how to do it. Brands and companies are getting into this space in droves. It's become very in vogue now. And podcasting has a great value it can bring to brands. But a lot of them work in HR and don't know how to do podcast. So if you can position yourself as somebody who's grown a podcast, who knows how to monetize a podcast and promote it and do all the things, there is money to be made simply as somebody who's good at it. And there's no real credentialing at this point. I'm sure there's a college out there that's offering a podcast certificate. There usually is somewhere, but the real credentialing in podcasting right now is, I have a successful show. Look at this show. Look how much money it makes. Look what the audience looks like. You know my show, right? Like that's the way that you can leverage. So if you find yourself in that position, be thinking about, how do I put other people in that position? Can I monetize myself, not as the show, but as a creator, as an expert? And then the last piece is to start a network. And I'll harken back to our friend Kira, who is launching a network tomorrow, I believe, of similarly structured podcasts to her own. It's a very niche audience, and high value and great quality content. But Kira was able to take what made her podcast successful, bring it to other creators in that space, and now she doesn't have just her show. She's got an army of shows that she's launching, all in a network that she's helping these creators to make money. She's bringing value to them. She's able to extract value, and it's a great scenario. Once you know what you're doing, be part of other people's success, and you'll find that kind of snowballs for you. And sorry.
Amazing.
Oh.
So much information. I hope you guys have a pen and pad out there. If not, then we'll be saving this live to our YouTube. You can watch it over and over and over again. Take it as a class, because it's a lot of information. That was a great presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of spewed it all out at you there. Sorry, but
no, it's a lot. But I mean, it's in video form, so you guys can, like a podcast, always refer back to it. Always go and check. So.
If you registered for the event, we can also send these slides to you. So you'll have those, because there are some direct links to some resources here on this last one. You have Podbean Academy is a great resource on everything A to Z podcasting. Our YouTube channel, of course, now you've found our YouTube channel, most of you. But in case you need a quick link back to it, there's always great content that Shay and Jared and everyone's putting out there. And Podbean Amplified, our podcast, been newly relaunched, right?
We're on 7 episodes, baby, and we're going strong.
You're going real strong. I love it. And then if you have any general questions, contact at podbean.com. I'm Mark D at podbean.com. We're a small and mighty team, so we're all happy to help.
Absolutely. That was a lot of information. That was great. The one important thing that I want to emphasize, though, if you don't know too much about pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll ads, the reason why we talk about post-roll ads being not 100% efficient most times and you want to put maybe one back there depending on your audience, of course, but it's because you always have an outro to your podcast, or there's always a segment where the listener feels like they're slowly getting out and you're about to finish, and they can see it on their RSS feed. But a lot of times I click out of YouTube videos, I click out of podcasts as soon as they're saying goodbye. That's all I have today. I mean, that's all the information they're giving. And so just knowing exactly with intention, placing those ads and really keeping in mind your podcast and the structure of it more than anything is essential.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. There's a lot of people asking questions. I love it. I'm so excited to talk to you guys. Let's take a look. We have Myths and Legends and Anime Explained. Hello. How's it going?
Hey.
It says, can you make more money if you're in a less popular niche? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think Mark touched a little bit on it. If you want to explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, for every niche that there is in the world, there's usually somebody who is having a hard time finding specifically that audience. So the trick to that is to go to them and say, or to think of who that's going to be, find who that high value advertiser is going to be, and just match them up. So if you have a niche podcast and a broad advertiser, it's going to be low value. So it's, if you, I'm trying to think of a niche here off the top of my head. I can't come up with one. Who is the podcast again?
I think this is a YouTube channel. I'm not sure if they're a podcast.
Well, it works there too. But yeah, the short answer is there is an advertiser out there who specifically wants to talk to your audience. If you can show them that it's specifically just that audience, you'll find higher value for sure.
Yeah. Tucked away niches for sure. I mean, think about it. Before COVID, how popular was golf? Not so much. And now it's just something that people itch to go. It's like gambling. They always have to be out on the course, and it's almost an obsession. So, niches come and go, and they get bigger and then they get smaller. So the main thing is knowing who you are and who your audience is, and you're delivering it to the right people, because you'll always find advertisement within that niche. I mean, like Mark said, there's 4.4 million podcasts out there right now, and even more businesses than podcasts, to be honest. So just finding the right business, and it doesn't even have to be, like McDonald's or Walmart. It could be, mom and pop shop down the street that you want to point out in your local community, maybe something smaller like that. So just a little bit of ideas. I know I'm tangenting, but there's just so many ways that you can make money, truthfully. There are paid advertisements. People want, even on Podbean, we have promote your podcast, so you can promote your podcast on somebody else's podcast. So there's so many ways to advertise yourself and your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a mini pod, what is the best way to approach an advertiser? From Jamila Adams' experience.
As a mini pod. So I'm assuming something, a podcast that's kind of small in its audience, kind of specific. Hopefully I've got that right. That being the case, I think the best way to approach an advertiser is to package up all the value that you bring. Your podcast is likely not the only piece of your content. If it's not, package up all of your content, your YouTube channel, your social media channels, all that kind of stuff, and speak very specifically about the audience that speaks to. And really, you're approaching your advertisers from the, hey, I think you're wanting to talk to this type of person. I've got a lot of them that I'm talking to every week. How can I help you out? And that's kind of the idea to put the pitch together. Hopefully I've interpreted that correctly.
100%. And honestly, guys, be prepared for, feeling like you're talking to a wall, not getting responses. Do your work and reach out to all those brands, because I promise you they'll reach back. I was talking to somebody the other day about advertisements and, them reaching out. And as a successful podcaster today, she was asked, how did you get so many brand deals? And she's like, I didn't have a single one. Nobody was offering me anything. I was sending out probably 10, 25, 50 emails, DMs, going online. If you really care about a certain niche, say you're into golf and you love Callaway, You can send them a DM, go to their website, look up their marketing director, look up their advertising director or sales or whoever is in charge of advertising, and you can reach them directly. Send them emails, personal emails. People respond to those more than they do on social media because social media is so flooded with all of these messages and requests. But if you're persistent, and you're doing it at a large volume, you'll get responses. Almost like making cold calls and sales. You're selling yourself. You're selling your podcast. And so that's what people don't understand. Don't get discouraged by it. It's hard work. It's hard work at first, but you'll see the return eventually.
Absolutely.
All right. So Katie M. Scott, however, we can't place ads until after we get 1,000 subscribers, right? So I think you're more talking about downloads.
Yeah, I believe it is downloads. But you're half right. You can't end up in the ads marketplace with less than 1,000, or you can't get programmatic ads, I believe is how it works out, for less than 1,000 downloads in a month. That does not mean that you cannot sell ads on your own. What it does mean is that you aren't connected to the big machines of the big agencies that are going to pay you $5 or $5 per thousand downloads to put Coca-Cola ads on your podcast. But realistically, at that stage, your best monetization options aren't going to be from programmatic advertising. They are going to be from direct sold sponsorships on a flat rate or at least a higher rate. And you can do all of that through pod ads. You can have one download a month and use the DAI tools that we have in Podbean to place your own ads. It's just a matter of being listed out where all the agencies are. So you got to do more footwork, but you can absolutely sell ads for your podcast at that stage.
100%. And don't even get discouraged by not having those 1,000 downloads right off the bat, because by selling yourself outside of here, you could even possibly make more money by selling sponsorships onto your podcast. I mean, you could have 5 sponsorships lined up before you even drop your first episode just by being a great salesperson of yourself, saying, hey, I have this episode. This is what I'm doing. This is my structure. People love structure. They love to know that you're going to be consistent, and they want to know where their money is going and that it's useful. So the reason why Podbean itself doesn't open up until you have 1,000+ downloads, it's not necessarily because it's more for the advertisement and getting value out of it, because people are not going to put money on there if you're getting 1 listener, or 2, or maybe 50. When you have 1,000, now advertisers, when they're looking to put their ads on top of your podcast, they're keeping in mind, oh, I know automatically that these podcasts have been vetted and people are watching them consistently. Or maybe to I Thank you for the questions. You guys are rolling it in. I'm so excited. Okay. Ledger, a writing podcast, says or asks, any tips for approaching advertisers with slow but steady growth over a few years? Not a huge explosion of listeners, but enough that is obvious as an audience.
Yeah. So as a podcaster, you are first and foremost an influencer, right? And that's what people are going to pay you to be, is to influence an audience. The more deeply you can influence an audience, the better that's going to be. So you can generally get a higher return kind of per listener, like a deeper influence over a smaller number of listeners than a shallower influence over a broad number of listeners. And so if you've got somebody who's got steady organic growth, that's going to be indicative of a podcast that has deep kind of fan identified listeners, people who are truly following that show. And so you're going to find out what's true about those listeners and what's valuable about them, and then approach the advertisers about that. A lot of times, direct sponsorship, direct flat rate sponsorship is going to be your best bet, and that's something that, again, you have to do the legwork yourself on, but it is worth doing because it's where you're going to get the real return.
100%. Okay. Amazing Tales is asking, I have a weekly podcast. 4 episodes per month bring about 7,500 downloads per month. Can I attract advertisers on sponsoring all episodes in a month?
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of times packages are made up that way. Um, Again, our tools can allow you to manage those campaigns through dynamic insertion, and you can put start and end points on them, and you can track all the way through it. But that's a great way to package and sell it, and it's been a successful strategy for many we've seen.
100%. I mean, that's even better for people because instead of saying, hey, I do 1 episode a week, would you like to be a sponsor on here? You can bring forth a whole couple of episodes saying, in this month, I do 4 episodes per week. Would you be willing to put X amount of money and I can allocate it for this week or this week's episode, this week's episode. So having a set plan and having a lot of content is good. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the pain of being remote is we're always a little delayed. Sorry about that.
No, you're all good.
So I was just going to add to it that another strategy that we see kind of append off of that is people will sell sponsorships for like special series inside of their podcast or a special episode or something like that. So if you're going to do a 4-episode series on the greatest golfers ever, you might go to Callaway and say, hey, I'm doing a series, the greatest golfers ever. You want to come talk about it, right? Even if you're just a general sports podcast, now you've got something that's really specific to them. And so packaging that way, it can also make a lot of sense.
100%. Okay, let's see. World Footprints is asking, any examples for pitch sheet? Email. I have a BFF called AI, ChatGPT, and I use her quite a bit. I don't think we have any structure or examples up on Podbean Academy for this specific thing, but I do know, honestly, give as much information as you can with as little words as possible. What I mean by this is a lot of people like to add fluff to make them seem a little more business-like. I would just say this is what you are. What is your intention? What do you want to get out of it? Because most times that's what people want. They want to know, okay, I know you want something, but I want to know what it is. So be direct, be upfront at first so that when they read the first few lines, you hook them in. I would say the first few lines better get their attention so that it's worth the rest of the read.
Yeah, I like to think of it in the spam email fashion. So you get hundreds of spam emails a day. A lot of them hit a filter. You don't ever even see them. But what has caught your eye recently that actually caused you to read further? The people who are going through these sheets, they're doing it a second at most at a time. There's just constantly barrage with it. So you have to be as just kind of really reinforcing what Shay said here. You just have to be as informationally dense as far as say the most with the least amount of words to stand out. And you know, if you wouldn't read further if it was an email in your spam box, then it's probably not going to get read further as a sheet of paper on an agency desk.
100%. 100%. Let's see. So they said, how does one decide the sponsorship level? It's dependent. I mean, if you're thinking about Podbean, we have 3 different ones. So you can promote your podcast. We have the ad. Promote your podcast is essentially you can put a trailer or a little blurb of your podcast and insert it onto somebody else's who's doing well. And with these insertions, you can pick the demographic, you can pick the podcast, you can pick one podcast, you can pick many podcasts where you allocate your money to. And then we have the marketplace where you have to have the thousands downloads per month, but you get put into the marketplace where people can actually use and utilize your podcast as a way to advertise for themselves. So that would allow you to find advertisers to put on your podcast and also get the offer. Now, the way that Podbean is set up, I think it's really fantastic, because when you put your ad, or when you promote and you put your ad on somewhere, it goes on once, and then the actual podcast gets to decide if they like or do not like your advertisement. So if you're a Callaway and you're coming onto my podcast because I love to golf and I am a Titleist golfer, I can see that and go, I'm sponsored by Titleist. Sorry, I can click and it can be gone, and your money is still going to be used properly, dispersed through other alike podcasts, if that makes sense. So Podbean really does a great job in making sure that your money is utilized and used correctly. It also tells you where it goes, how long it's going to be used, and how many people have, so many details, so many stats, and I love it. I love it. And then the last one. Yeah, sorry, dynamic ad insertion. I forgot the last one. I know I was tangenting. And then that would be the bigger sponsors that you can add on yourself.
From the podcaster's perspective, just to kind of take it from that other side, if you're deciding what your sponsorship levels are for your podcast, the short answer is the highest amount of money you can convince somebody to pay. And at the beginning, that's going to be lower. And what you're going to find is it's going to be a little bit iterative. You're going to talk to some people who are like, I don't like it at $500 a month. Maybe I do it at 100. You're like, I don't love it at 100, but I can get started. And as I go and I prove it out, I can raise my price over time. I think a lot of like time-based package sponsorships generally range from $500 to $5,000 a month, depending on who and who you're talking to. But it could range even farther than that. As far as CPMs for your show, if you are going to go CPM-based advertising, it's already set for you based on the advertiser spend. So you just kind of automatically you don't have to make that decision coming in. But if you do decide to do CPM-based advertising or impressions-based advertising on your own, direct sold impressions-based advertising is generally going to be between $18 and $22 per 1,000 impressions.
I love that. And also going back to you not having 1,000+ downloads, or you just have a little mini pod, I would definitely utilize social media. Social media, we are in the social media age, people. You need to be utilizing it. I mean, even if you have one episode per month, but you're uploading every single day content onto your social media, and your social media blows up, that could be a way for you to get a sponsor as well, because it's your brand. You're now putting your brand not only in podcast form, but you're sprinkling it everywhere and making sure that you're covering all your bases to give yourself the best opportunity to be seen by anybody.
It pays off twice because it also grows your audience. It is the way to get discovered, especially through YouTube and then through some of the short video forums. We're finding that it's a huge discovery engine, and then it feeds back into an excellent monetization engine as well.
Oh, yeah. Especially, I mean, reels, trailers, YouTube shorts, trailers, reels, TikToks, and shorts are all trailer forms of your podcast. You're not only putting a clip of your podcast, but you're also showcasing yourself a little bit, and you're putting the best pieces. So now, instead of somebody who is going onto the podcast app, like, what podcast should I listen to? They're now on Instagram like, oh, that looks like a fun podcast. The next time I go on, I'm going to listen to them. Or they might listen to you right away because they think that your little segment of that episode is great. And so you automatically have another listener. It's up to your podcast, obviously, to keep them. But, it's a great way to get them to your page.
I'll add that media buyers are some of the biggest consumers of media. It's something to keep in mind. That there's a lot of discovery that can happen that way as well. That if you've got good content that's reaching the right people, and the channels that they're just consuming naturally, they'll recognize your name when it comes time to sell a sponsorship. So it's worth doing.
Absolutely. Let's see. Uh-oh.
It's never good.
Yeah, I'm still looking. I'm getting a lot of People saying that it's the connection.
I don't know.
Is it theirs? Oh, okay. So Amazing Tales says, just so I'm sure, I have 190 published episodes over 4 years. Cumulatively, I get more than 10,000 downloads per month, but you're talking about downloads per episode? No, we're talking about monthly downloads.
Yeah. In general, some advertisers are going to look for your downloads per episode because that's indicative of a consumption behavior that's important to them. But in general, when we're talking about download numbers, we're talking about monthly downloads.
If you're a little confused, think of it as if you have Spotify, just the music, they show you, if you click on the artist, how many monthly listeners they have. So downloads is almost equivalent to that, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, pretty much is. Okay. Let's see. Trying to filter through these comments. I love it.
Well, while we're looking for that next one, I will also add on reach is an important metric for advertisers. So if you're getting 10,000 downloads per month, your per episode downloads may be important to that advertiser, but also reach, right? Are 5 people consuming 2,000 episodes each or 2,000 listens each? That's a very different scenario than 10,000 people individually listening at some point throughout the month. And so some advertising strategies are going to be a lot more individual focused. Some of them are going to be a lot more repetition focused. You can just kind of work out with the advertiser and what's valuable to them and their strategy, what works best. But in general, you're going to be looking at downloads and reach for how you're presenting to an advertiser.
Reach is the same as listeners, yes. Well, yes.
Yeah, where head meets headphone. That's reach.
You're reaching them. But yes, that was amazing. That was a lot of information. This has been amazing. I would like to say thank you for your time, Mark, and your expertise on sales and all things monetization, how to grow your podcast, making money. He definitely knows where it's at. So if you're looking to be a little more serious with podcasting, definitely take notes of this, take notes of his slide, and really digest everything that we had to say. I know we spit out a lot, and we're just going to keep giving you this information because it's all free. It's all necessary in order to get your podcast to where you want it to be. I mean, you're watching this video, so obviously you want to grow your podcast, and we here at Podbean want to help you. But we will be doing this once a month. And so if you were a little shy, you didn't want to ask your questions now, or maybe we unloaded and you didn't know what to expect, next time, definitely come with your pen and paper and your notes and your questions, and we will be here answering away. But this has been our first live webinar. It has been so great. It has been fun. I was really nervous, but you guys, Mark killed it, the comments killed it, and we're going to keep killing it. So until next time.